Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey everybody, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is our very own Self-Publishing School graduate, one of the most successful students in the program, Lise Cartwright. And I'll give you a little bit of background on Lise. Lise is a best-selling author and a coach based in Auckland, New Zealand. And she writes her books and her blog for time-poor entrepreneurs and new freelancers looking for actionable information to help them move forward in their business, whether they're just starting out or just need help moving forward and achieving their goals. Now, she's got an amazing story, and really the numbers speak for themselves. She's been a writing machine, and over the last 10 months, she's gotten 14 books out, all from scratch. We're not talking ghostwriters, and also we're not talking crappy, really bad quality books, just pumping them out and not caring. We're talking good books and a really engaged community off of these books of people who love them, can't wait to buy the next one and the next one and the next one, and who are begging for more. So I think that's been pretty exciting, and also built an income of a few grand a month, and that's only building. I mean, she's so busy writing right now that it's just put the book out there, and she doesn't even spend a ton of time on the marketing portion of it. But that really is, as you're building an author platform, that is the recipe for success up front, is really getting in there. And I know these books will continue to grow and grow and grow into an even bigger income. So I'm really excited to talk with Lise. And Lise, welcome.
Thank you.
I know we've been on.
I sound good.
I know we've been on about 1,000 of these hangouts, but so this is par for the course. But I'm excited to dive down into your story and into how you've been able to do this, because it really is remarkable when you look at the stats here. But before we get into a lot of that and to more of the actionable advice, let's take it back a little bit and take us back to your first book. What was that? What was that like? And how was that process?
So my very first book was a guide that I'd written back in 2012 or 2013, I can't remember, around how to be a freelance writer on Odesk. And I initially just sort of launched it on my website. I didn't put it on Amazon. Amazon at that stage wasn't even on my radar. And I remember reading a whole bunch of blog posts and stuff like that, and people saying, yeah, it's really easy to write a book, put it on your website, and you'll sell thousands of copies. It did not happen that way at all. So when I sort of stepped back and went, okay, well, how does this actually work? I probably spent another 6 months researching and just really trying to figure out how to not only sort of write a book that sells, but also get it into a lot of people, because at that stage, my blog wasn't very big. I didn't have a huge list. In fact, I don't even think I had any more than 50 people on that list. So, trying to figure out a way to sort of get that book into many hands was kind of where I was at by the time I came to Self-Publishing School.
Got it.
And
go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I remember having a conversation with you about that book, and my idea coming in was that I would revamp that book. And I remember you sort of saying, Lise, I think you should just start from scratch. Like, I think that it might be a better process to go through this. And when I ran the numbers and did sort of keyword research on Amazon, or specifically on Kindle, no one was really searching for freelance writing or freelance writing on Odesk. So for me, that was like, well, there's not really a market there. So I decided to shelve that and then do something completely new, not even in a niche that I was writing in or anything like that. So to me, I count the book No Gym Needed as like my first real proper book, because I did all the research and went through and did all of that sort of stuff. So No Gym Needed is probably my first real book, and the freelance writing guide is probably, it's more of a guide, like a PDF guide than a book. So yeah, so that's what I would say would be my first book.
Got it. And I remember this because I remember going through the whole process of doing this book together, and all the calls and the positioning and all that, which was a lot of fun. But take us through, for the people who don't know about that. What was that process like? And also, what was it like to go into a completely different niche, different industry than what you had even written on before or had previously had experience with?
Yeah, I guess when I sat down to, because when you said, okay, let's start from scratch, I literally did start from scratch. I had no idea about what I was going to do. I just wrote a whole bunch of ideas down and focused more on the problems that I was facing at that sort of time, because I still wanted to write about something that I kind of knew about, because I didn't want to have to go through and learn a whole bunch of stuff. I wanted to sort of write from a place where I knew stuff about. And it's not until you start kind of mind mapping and writing stuff, just writing ideas down, that you realize just how much stuff you actually know. And I think that was key for me when I started writing stuff down like that. I was like, oh my, I could write a ton of books about a whole lot of stuff, because you have life experience. But as you progress through the different stages of life, you have life experience. And so that's what I decided to do. That's how I sort of came to No Gym Needed. Was at the time I was struggling to find a way to exercise. I hate the gym. Just not a fan. And yeah. So for me, I was just like, okay, I just really struggled trying to find the motivation also to exercise and make it consistent, and also make it short, because aside from not liking the gym, I also don't like to spend hours exercising either. So I wanted to find a way to exercise in a short amount of time with maximum results. And so that's really how No Gym Needed came about. And I remember the mind mapping exercise for me was the biggest process that just made things sort of come into, I'm trying to find the right words, come into, like, I'm a visual person. So actually going through that process of doing the mind mapping, just I could see like the chapters developing, and I could see the direction start to come out, even though it was a complete jumble of nothing at that time. So that process for me is now something that I do for every single book. I mind map everything out, because it gets everything out, and then I can start, with colored pens and stuff like that, start drawing and making connections and stuff like that. So that's what really helped me to be able to write as many books as I have, because mind mapping just gets it from here down onto paper. And I physically do it. I don't use those mind mapping online tools. I find, I find the physicality just cements it more.
So much better, because you're not limited to a screen and to a doc. You can just start
go everywhere.
Now explain this process. What does this mind mapping process look like for you, especially for those people who might not even know what mind mapping is?
Yeah. So for me, it's really just, if I start with just an idea, so it may not even be a specific niche or anything like that. It'll just kind of be an idea that I've had in the sort of back of my mind. So I'll write that sort of in the middle of the page, and then I'll just jot down everything that comes to my mind about that idea. And I'll use, lots of different colors and arrows, and I draw bubbles around ideas, and, that's just kind of how it morphs out. And then from that process there, I start to group things together and maybe write a little bit more around sort of each idea. So that's kind of how I sort of start the process, is just starting with an idea, maybe even a working title, like we had with, what was it? No Gym Workouts, which we really loved, but nobody else did.
Yep.
No, it didn't. So yeah, so that's how the process really works for me now. And when I first started, I would probably do that process over sort of 2 or 3 days, like kind of let it marinate. And now pretty much, if I have what I think is a solid idea, I mind map. I've got about 5 or 6 mind maps on my wall of books that I haven't written yet, just because I find that if I don't get it out, it rattles around in here for a while. So Just
So
doing
it's
the
almost a
mind
way
map
of,
how.
of clearing it out to where
Yeah,
you say, okay, when I go back to that idea, it's over there on
that's
that.
right. Then I can deal with it. That's exactly right, and expand on it. Yeah. So
And how do you have so many book ideas? Where do those come from?
my head. I don't know. I guess when I sat down and started this process, particularly with No Gym Needed, I was always in the mindset of writing books in a series. So when I did that book and then I did my next book, Side Hustle Blueprint, I always sort of thought about doing them in a series. So I mind mapped an entire series. I have an entire series for No Gym Needed. I have an entire series for Side Hustle Blueprint. And when I say series, I mean like 10 books in each series. So I have a lot of books to write. And so, yeah, so that I just mind mapped them because for me, it was like, okay, well, it's not really a singular idea. It expands. I didn't want to write, a 500-page book on just that one topic because as a reader, as someone who consumes, I only like to read for 2 hours, max in any one given time. So I want to consume quickly. So that's how I write my books. Quick, so they can be consumed.
Map your way into a lot of different books.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I think that's pretty common. We see a lot of students they start with that mind map process and they think, hey, I could maybe write 5 to 10 pages about this topic I'm thinking about. And then you get lost in your mind map and then you're like, whoa, I've got 2 to 3 books, in your case, 10 books that I could write. I just got to figure out which one to write first.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Love that. So you were in your class of self-publishing school, you were the first person to publish. Rapid implementation. And I know you're really proud of that and really gunning for that. So why do you think that was? Like, what was it about you that helped you to get through because like you said, you started from scratch just like everyone else, but how did you get through the process so quickly and get to publish so quickly?
Well, for me, it was about setting a consistent schedule for the writing. So I'm a freelance writer, have been for 3+ years now, full time. So I had clients, I had stuff going on in the day that I had to sort of work around. So I knew for me, the only way that I was going to get this book written was to actually schedule the time in. Like there was no point me just going, being airy-fairy about it and not making a actual set time in the calendar. And whether that time moved didn't matter as long as it was in the calendar. So I made a concerted effort to write for at least an hour a day during the week, and I took the weekends off. And then I found that the more consistently I did that, my writing came faster. So initially when I first started, I was writing about 1,000 words in an hour. By the time I'd finished the book, it was up to 2,000 words an hour. I'm like, I type fast. So I just found that the words just came out faster, just the more I did it. So it was just having that consistency. I know that sounds probably really simple, but it really is. It was just about being consistent. And I think I wrote the book in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe. Yeah.
Got it. That's great. And so what would you say to people that said, Lise, 2.5 weeks, there's no way that's a good book? That's too fast.
I would say go and check out No Gym Needed. It's still number 1 in Amazon. That's what I would say. That's a 30,000 word book.
Well, what about just the concept? Because there are a lot of people, and obviously you and I are on the same page on this, but there are a lot of people who think 2.5 weeks writing fast equals a crappy book. Like, what would you say to that?
Well, I completely disagree because I think the key is that you have researched the crap out of it, that you know that there is a market and that you know what you're writing about. So I'm not just writing crappy stuff. Like I made sure that that what I was writing made sense. Like I had an editor that went through it. I self-edited it and then handed it to somebody else. So I definitely recommend that you do that. I would never not edit. I did it once where I didn't have an editor because I was like, I got this. I'm fine. Yeah, no. Would never ever recommend doing that because the minute someone picks up a mistake, yeah, that's a 1-star review there and there. So always use an editor. So I think for me, I had the mind map was huge. And then I outlined the book before I sat down to start writing it. So I was also consuming information around the book topic at the same time. So where I had gaps, that's where I was kind of reading and learning information that would then transfer into the book. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that just because you write fast that that's necessarily going to mean that it's going to be a crappy product.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's this whole concept of immersing yourself in the book. And that's when you use Parkinson's law, which is an object will swell in proportion to the amount of time you give yourself to complete it. And you use that to your advantage to get a much better product. Because just like so many published authors, they have a year and a half to write their book, and it all happens in the last 3 months. But when they're on the deadline, you're just circumventing that process and using it for your advantage. Now,
I could have like 20 books written in a year. Like,
yeah, well, we're at 14 in 10 months, so you got to write six more books in the next 2 months. Which
I'll do it.
you've done before.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the 7 books in 7 weeks challenge later, because that's mind bending. But first, I want to touch in on. So you went from finished book. I can't remember if this was got back from the editor or if this was actually first draft finished. I think it was got back from the editor. But you went from finished book to book on Amazon, and it was either 7 or 9 days. I can't remember, which was way faster than most people. How did you do that?
So literally, instead of getting stuck in the minutiae of launching and overthinking that whole process, because it's daunting, like the marketing side of it can be really daunting. I just sort of took the approach. I just went, you know what? I don't have a list. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to follow the process that you guys had laid out. So I went, you know what? I'm not going to worry about having a long launch or anything like that. I just want to ship it. I want to get it out there. As you said, done is better than perfect. So I took that to heart. So for me, I think by the time I got it back from the editor, I did a read through and I went, okay, well, really, what am I waiting for? Like, there is no list. Like I did a really short sort of pre-launch list. I think I had 30 people on that list. So I think it was 7 days. And then I launched it, and yeah, the rest is history, really. I just didn't want to get stuck overthinking that process. So that's why I was just like, I'm just going to do it. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off. I just was like, let's just do it.
I love that analogy. And were there fears, were there doubts that you had to overcome? Because like you were just touching on, like so many people, they get to that published point and they're like, oh, I'll edit for a few more weeks, or the book's finished editing, I'll push it back. There's a holiday coming up. Memorial Day is a couple weekends before that. And then, Christmas it's like, there's never the perfect time, and people will have a million reasons why they aren't launching their book. So what were those fears that came up, and then how did you overcome those?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess once I got it back from the editor, it was just kind of like, okay, well, this is it. And then I remember thinking, holy crap, if I launch this, is anyone going to read it? Like, who the hell am I to write a book? And especially in the health and fitness industry, like, I'm not a personal trainer. I know my body, but I don't know anybody else's. So yeah, all that sort of stuff went through my head. But at the same time, I'm quite self-aware. So when it got back from the editor, I made a promise to myself that I would only read through it once. And I trusted the editor. So that's the other thing. You have to have a good relationship. If the editor didn't pick it up, then I wasn't going to pick it up. Like, that's what I sort of figured. I figured done is better than perfect. Just kept going through my head. I had it written above, I had it printed out and above my laptop. So I just kept looking at that. And then I just kept doing the tasks. So every day I was just like, okay, put it up on Amazon there, hit publish, get some reviews. So I just did, having that process kind of mitigated or kind of stopped me from thinking about it too much. I was just like, I'm just going to follow the process and not think about it. I remember going to bed at night with stuff running through my head, but every morning when I got up, I would see done is better than perfect, and just follow the process. Like, for me, it's just, if I have a process there, then I just follow it through, and to hell with anything. Like because for me, I was just kind of like, whatever happens, like I didn't want to worry about it too much, and in spite of being fearful, I just did it anyway. So I don't know. I'm just kind of that sort of person where I'm just like, I'll just try. And if it doesn't work, I adjust. Like you just tweak, adjust, and keep moving forward.
Great. And you keep saying the process. Are you talking about the process inside self-publishing school, or?
Yes, sorry, I am.
Cool.
Your checklist for launching. So I just followed every single step. So I remember saying to you when I came into the course, I was just like, I'm just going to do whatever you tell me. That's all. So I was like, I'm not deviating from that. Whatever you tell me, I will do. Like I was ready, what is the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah. I love that. Now let's move on from that and talk about the book since then. So rapid implementation. Then the next book came on pretty quickly on the heels of that one, right?
Yep. 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Because so I remember when I started writing No Gym Needed, I had started writing it for both men and women. So it was a combined book. Halfway through the editing process, I got stuck. Like I got stuck with the title, and I remember James saying, Lise, I think you should split it up into male and female. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? The editor has it. And he was like, you know what? I think that's the best option forward. So I remember emailing Anna and going, stop. I need to rework. Just stop whatever you've done. So I split the book into two and launched the female one first, and then did the men's one a couple of weeks later.
That's awesome. And so that one, I love how you talk about series, and you kind of serialize that in a sense too. And I've given that advice from what you did to other people since, which is, hey, just make a women's version and a men's version. And it wasn't that difficult to do. So that's awesome. And let's move on from that. So the next books, because you moved from workout books to totally different. You went back to the freelancing side. So you want to tell us a little bit about that and what went into that decision?
So the next the next two books that I wrote was under the brand Side Hustle Blueprint. So I did Side Hustle Blueprint, and then one about how to make money writing books, because I was making money then. So the reason that I went down that track is because I had a blog around freelancing and how to sort of do that. And a lot of the problems that a lot of people kind of face when they're thinking about freelancing or thinking about making an extra income is it's scary to start. And it's also, what the heck do you do? Like sitting in an office, you're probably, you sort of think to yourself, what skill do I actually have that I could then monetize, that I could actually convert into something? So that's how Side Hustle Blueprint came about, because I was like, okay, I think people need to think outside the square. And I came up with this massive list of different skills, and not necessarily it's not just online. There's loads of things that you can do on the side. So not everybody wants to leave their job, but everybody wants to have a little bit of extra money. So that's kind of how the Side Hustle Blueprint series came about. I've got a whole bunch more to sort of write in that. And then after I sort of did those two books, I started getting questions directly from my community on my blog around actually the freelancing business side of stuff. So how to actually set up the business, how do you charge clients properly? How do you make sure that you're getting paid correctly? And, how do you make sure you get paid? So I sat down and went, when I was sitting down to sort of do my goals in December for the year ahead, I just thought, what would it look like if I did 7 books in 7 weeks? Like, how would that even work? So that's what I did. I sat down and wrote a book a week, basically.
Where did that idea come from?
I remember I caught a webinar. I think her name is called The Book Ninja, I think is her name. And she had written something like 28 books in 28 weeks, something crazy like that. And I thought, I'm pretty sure I can't do that. I mean, I could, but I don't think I'd be overly sane by the end of it. And I just thought I wanted to kickstart off 2015 with a bang. Like I wanted to do something big that would kind of set the tone for myself for the year. So that's why I just went, okay, I'm going to do 7 books in 7 weeks. Now, I did a bit of planning behind that. So I didn't just sit down and go, okay, book 1, what will I write? I actually sat down and mind mapped the entire series out. Like I had a plan of where I wanted to go. And that's how I was able to kind of write those books the way that I was, because I wrote each book in 24 hours. Like I did it in 2 days, where I just went through, I had the books semi-outlined, so I had the chapters and a brief summary for each one. And then I sat down and wrote. And because my blog is all about freelancing, it was super easy to do that. Like it was just like writing a 10,000, 15,000 word blog post. Real for me, like that process was easy because it was something that I knew. But I wouldn't recommend writing and launching at the same time. So halfway through the 7 books in 7 weeks, I stopped trying to launch each book at the same time. I would write. So I wrote and published a book a week, and then I went through the process of launching them after the fact, because after about 3 weeks, I was brain dead and just really struggling with trying to keep on top of everything. So I made the decision sort of halfway through. I just went, you know what? I'm just going to write and publish, and not worry about the launch.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. What was the workload like during those 7 weeks? Like, what did your weeks look like?
Crazy. So I had to carve out the time. So I just cleared the deck every Monday. So all client work I'd either had to have done sort of the week previously, or I just had to, before I started the challenge, I got up to speed on where everything's at, and then planned out my weeks so that I had an entire day to just write on a Monday. And then, sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it was crazy. I remember my husband sort of going, what are you doing? I haven't seen you for, because I was literally, because of where, I'm here and my editor is in the States. So it was good because she'd be working through something at night. But if she had a question, we had like a crossover where it was morning her time and late at night my time. And, I'd be 10 p.m. at night responding to her question, and Guy would be like, what are you doing? Why are you still on your laptop? I mean, I'm building an empire.
I've got people in the United States working for me right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Leave me alone. So it was, yes, I was just going to say it was a amazing process, but not one that I would recommend you do without a bit of forethought and pre-planning beforehand.
And how many hours a week would you say you were doing on that? Because you were still doing client work. You were still, it's not like you just had nothing else to do.
Nothing. No, exactly. So if I say that each book took me sort of 8 to 9 hours to write the first draft, then I had to do a self-edit, hand it off to the editor. So I actually had a process written out of the flow. So write the book, self-edit, hand it to the editor. Then I knew that I had, and she was great. She turned them around in 24 hours. Then I was like, okay, cover design, titling, all that sort of stuff had to happen. Create a freebie, create a landing page, email opt-ins, all of that sort of stuff was happening. So I probably was doing 20 hours a week for the whole book stuff, and then 40 hours trying to keep up with the client stuff.
Got it.
Yeah, crazy.
Wow, that is crazy. And what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned out of that 7-week challenge?
That I can write a book a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like, I had the, as long as you have a decent outline, you have a checklist of everything that you need to do, you can do it. Like it was just, okay, this, and as long as you don't deviate from that, it's fine. So if I hadn't had any clients, this process would have been a breeze. Like if I didn't have anything else, I would have been much less stressed. So I learned that, and I learned, sort of halfway through that trying to write, publish, and launch it all in the same week it's impossible to do well. Like I found that after probably the first 2 weeks that something would suffer, either the launch or the writing. And so I made that decision to just not launch them because I wanted to make sure that the writing was still quality as I was going through that process. So yeah, so for me, I learned that I work well under pressure. Like I can meet that sort of a deadline, but not to worry about trying to launch kind of all at the same time. And if you are going to do that, you have to outsource it. Like you can't do everything yourself well.
And now, what was one thing you learned from that process that was a surprise that you didn't expect to come out of that?
Probably I was surprised that I couldn't launch. Like I was just like, because it's a process. Like, again, I'm very process driven, and I was like, I just have to follow a checklist. But there are a lot of moving parts when you're writing, and then when it's editing, and then you're going through a launch process. Like there's a lot of moving parts. And I learned that I just couldn't do everything myself, as much as I'm very much someone that likes to do everything themselves. I learned that I have to let go, and I have to outsource some of the process. Otherwise, I'm just going to go nuts, or it's just not going to happen. Like, I'll just continue writing books and never launching. Like,
now, what did your editor think of all this?
She was great. Like when I approached her about what I wanted to do, because I needed to get a commitment from her to do it. So when I approached her and said, this is what I'm thinking, are you on board? Is it going to be okay? And the books weren't 30,000 words. They were on average between 12,000 and 15,000 words each. So not huge books. So she said to me, as long as you get them to me Monday night, your time, I can get them back to you by Wednesday morning, my time. So that was the agreement we had, and it just worked. Like, if I missed towards the end of the 7 weeks, I think the last book I got to her a little bit late. By that stage, she was just like, it's all good. She said, I'm hardly ever having to do anything. She said, your writing is just down pat now. So she said there's just a little grammatical things. So she said, yeah. So that was great. It was good to be able to, but yeah, if I hadn't had her, then it probably wouldn't have flowed as quickly.
That's important. That's a great takeaway is finding a good editor to work with. Mm-hmm. And people's definitions of editing are different, whereas you just need a copy editor and you're a great writer. I need more of a content editor where they can restructure sentences and they can get in there and really, really make it better. But I like getting my thoughts out and then saying, hey, make this a lot better. Say this in the way that I'm thinking, but I can't quite say it on the page. So I guess that's a good lesson for people listening right now, is draw out those distinctions. But regardless, a good editor is a key asset in this whole process, so that you can have someone to pass it off to and make your work a lot better.
Exactly.
Now, what about since this 7 books in 7 weeks? What have books been like since then? Because you've seen kind of the other extreme. So what has it been like since?
So I took 2 months off from writing. I physically and mentally just had to do that, because I was at the end of that process. I was like, okay, I'm actually over writing, which was a little bit tricky because I still had blog posts to write. I still had to do that sort of process, but I kind of needed to just, I don't know, debrief and just kind of step back. And I did. Like, it was just, but I found that probably after 2 weeks, it's like, I think I might be ready to write another book. No, you need to. And my husband was like, no, you need to take like a month. And I'm like, oh, but I've got all these ideas. And so how I kind of combated that is that I went, okay, I'll do some co-authoring projects. So that's what I did. I co-authored a book that just came out this week, and I'm co-authoring another book at the moment. So that kind of eased me back in, and I found that process to go really well. But now after this next co-authoring book, I'm chomping at the bit to just write all those other books. You know, there's like 30 books just kind of shouting at me from the wall. So
you've got a wall of books shouting.
Yeah.
That's great. So it's I really like that, is, you know, taking some time off, because then your urge to get back at it is a lot higher. So but I am curious, I'm going to take a step back here a little bit, between this, you know, writing these books solo and writing during the 7-week writing challenge, and then even now to co-authoring, how has your writing process changed, or what are the differences there?
Now I know that I can write a lot. Like I'm writing even faster. Like I just find that the process is easier and easier the more that I do it. And the co-authoring process, it's so interesting when both the people that I've worked with haven't written a book before. So, you know, my first co-author, Mike, you know, went through the process, and it was so interesting to see his chapters compared to mine. So really long, like you put loads and loads of stuff, whereas I now am, you know, I'm straight to the point, no fluff, just literally write how I talk. And so, you know, I went back to Mike and I said, okay, this is awesome content, but just need to pare it down and just write how you would talk to someone. Just, you know, have a conversation. It doesn't need to be a tome of information. So it was that part of the process now, I think, is what I enjoy writing. So for me, I love doing it. So, but I found that, that whole process now is much easier, and I found I have a very distinct voice now, and so that's why I just run with. It's conversational, it's not academic or anything like that, and that's fine, because the feedback that I get from people who read my book, that's what they say. They're like, I really like the conversational tone, because otherwise it's not. Why would you read in, like, non-fiction can be boring. So I always try to make, especially like topics like freelancing, interesting, because that's how I talk. So I wish I could add my accent in there, because I know that people would probably, I need to do some audiobooks.
Yes, you do, because there's all kinds of funny pronunciations and words that we talk about all the time. Is it crazy for you to think about the fact that maybe 10 months ago or so you were starting your first real book project?
It really is. And, you know, I've had all of my books turned into paperback as well, because for me, I was like, I want that physical book as well. Like, I have my iPad and all my books are loaded on my Kindle, but having the physical book as well is just like, I'm an author. Like, you know, it's real. And, you know, every time Mum and Dad come to visit, I'll bring out my newest book. I'm like, look, Dad, there's my newest book. He's like, oh, that's really nice. So I have no idea. Like, it's so funny. But I just love that process. And, you know, that's stuff that I've done, that I've made, and it makes me really proud to be able to have that. And to think 10 months ago I didn't have any of that. It's crazy to think how fast that has happened.
Now, what's been the coolest part of that experience? I mean, being able to show your parents a book and something you've created, that's obviously really cool. And I remember that experience for myself in our case, one of our books was about our parents and all the awesome stuff they taught us. And that was that was like our Christmas gift to them. Priceless gift. But what are some other cool experiences, or just takeaways or wins, just cool things that have happened as a result of all this progress you've made over the last 10 months?
Hearing from people that I don't know, people that just, you know, email you and go, you know, I really loved your book. Because I think the other thing that I've realized is in this process is that you can get kind of, for me anyway, I can get kind of caught up in the writing and not really thinking about the impact that it has on somebody else. So for me, I'm just like, cool, yeah, I've written this book, cool, and I'm working on the next one. It's neat to be able to kind of step back and reflect on a book that you've just published. And then when you hear from other people that it actually makes a difference, that's cool. Like, I find that is probably the best part, is actually making a difference in somebody else's life, because I am not writing crappy stuff just for the hell of writing. I'm writing about stuff that I care about, and I want people who read it to kind of get that feeling that I care about what I'm writing. So I think that's the really cool thing. And then, I'm just randomly, appearing on podcasts and stuff like that. Like, just would never, here I am in Auckland, New Zealand. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So this is the cool stuff.
What are some of the unexpected opportunities that have happened as a result of these books?
Getting to coach in self-publishing school. being here, like talking to you. I on Nick Loper's recent podcast, like just completely left field. I think the fact that I had Side Hustle Blueprint, though, I think I said to Nick, I was like, really should have grabbed that one. That would have been a really good branding.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So just really cool stuff like that, and just having the opportunity to meet and talk to people in other locations. And we got to meet up when you were traveling down here. So there's just really cool connections everywhere.
Yeah, that was so cool. That was a cool experience for me to get to see, someone all the way around the world, Auckland, New Zealand, who, because of this program, because of this stuff online, having all the success with books, and actually getting to meet in person and ride Vespa scooters around and go to wineries. Yeah, it was your first time ever riding, and then you got to meet my whole family, which is probably more than you could bargain for. Yeah. And the crazy family, and that's the cool part. And speaking of family, like, what does your family think of all this? What do your friends think of all this?
To be honest, I don't think a lot of, like, my mum and dad are cool. They follow everything. They listen to all podcasts, everything like that. But I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and none of my siblings are. They're just like, oh yeah, she's always doing something different. Like, it's whatever. And my friends are kind of the same. Like, they're all just kind of like, that's cool. But I don't think any of them have read any of my books or fully understand really what it is that I do and what I've done to get to where I am. So meeting friends around the world and making connections outside of immediate friends and family, because friends and family just don't always understand what it is that you're doing, particularly when you're doing something that's outside the norm. So that's
100%.
been cool. That's what I've loved, is being able to connect with others that want to do the same sort of things that I'm doing, because friends and family are awesome, but again, they don't always understand what it is that you do, and which is cool. That's okay, because then you just meet more friends along the way.
And I know that sometimes friends and family can actually be a burden on those dreams, and actually can wear you down. And why are you doing this? Why are you spending all your time writing these books? 7 books in 7 weeks. That's a stupid idea. Like, all these things that can just chip away at your dreams. So how is making those relationships and online relationships and things like that, how has that helped you get through this process?
Well, to be honest, my friends and family have always been really supportive. They just haven't always understood. So from that perspective, I'm really lucky. Like, my husband's super supportive, and my family are as well. But, when I work from home, I don't have anyone to talk to on a day-to-day basis around me. Like, I can't just go meet someone for a coffee. So being able to chat on a Google Hangout, jump on Skype with someone, that's what I value, is being able to chat to people and just, bounce ideas off and talk about the stuff that we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, the stuff that everyone else looks at you when you explain it and they just glaze over.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds
exactly.
Or when you're having a rough day, that sounds really tough.
Yeah, nice.
They just have no clue what's actually
like when the internet's not working, or like I get really upset and everyone's just like, you're working from home. I'm like, you don't understand.
You just sound like a diva right now.
Yeah,
Really?
exactly.
The Wi-Fi, you're going to complain about and you're like, I run an online business. This is
Hello.
literally the only thing in my world that matters. Oh, that's
Exactly.
great. Now, before we wrap up and before we run, what would be a parting tip, parting piece of advice for people thinking about writing their first book?
Do it. Don't overthink it. Don't spend too much time in here talking yourself out of it. I love the whole done is better than perfect and taking imperfect action. Nothing has to be perfect. And particularly when you're self-publishing and publishing online, anything can be changed. So if you see something that needs tweaking, you just upload a new file. Like that's what I love, is the ability to continually improve on something that you've already done. So done is better than perfect. That's my key takeaway.
Awesome. And before we run, how can people find out more information about you and your books?
So you can check out my books on lisecartwright.com, or just Google me on Amazon. Does that sound right? Google me on Amazon. Search me on Amazon. Google has weaved its way into
Oh, wow. That is next level. Next level. Awesome. Well, Lise, thank you so much. It's been awesome seeing you grow ever since joining self-publishing school and beyond. And, whether it's coaching, whether it's writing all these books, giving back, and then also taking the information and running with it. Like, it's been amazing seeing your story develop and also seeing all the success. And we're really, really happy for you. And I just can't wait to see what else is coming up. So thanks for coming on and sharing those lessons and everything that you've learned throughout this whole journey.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Well, talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book, Published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps of how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.